CoLiving works, and it can rocket you to financial freedom. This interview is someone that I brought into my paid members, my paid community. And frankly, what happens in our paid community for the most part stays in our paid community. It's private, it's intimate. We have over 300 investors rocketing to their dreams, their financial freedom goals through this asset class called CoLiving. More on that later, but what I want to share with you is this interview I did with Ellis Tran. He's the PadSplit representative in the greater Phoenix, Arizona area. And we talk about everything, where we literally from how to find these properties to what it actually looks like from a regulation standpoint and how PadSplit is growing and developing. And then you'll get to be a fly on the wall as my students ask some questions of Ellis Tran about PadSplit and about the model. Now, the way that I preach and coach CoLiving is slightly different than the model that PadSplit has. PadSplit is a week-by-week rental that's furnished. To me, it kind of feels like a room Airbnb. What I believe and the model that I'm truly dedicated to is a long-term rental model where this becomes home. You see, I lived in CoLiving home for 13 and a half years. This was home for me. These guys and girls that lived with me became my best friends. And that's the kind of community I believe we can create if we do this model well, if we do this model correctly, if we do this model with a long-term mindset in mind. Like, think of it this way. The room is the new apartment. Hopefully that makes sense to you. You'll learn so much from this interview about the differences between kind of what I preach and PadSplit preaches, but ultimately we're all in the same game. We're solving affordable housing in America, and we're making it fun and easy and accessible for everybody. Enjoy this interview. Ellis, welcome, brother. And you know, that's a cool segue from Jens because, you know, operations is the hardest thing in this game, and that's why we spend so much time teaching it. It's why we spend so much time. We have so many modules on it. It's why we're bringing you on, brother. And so, first of all, good to meet you. Glad you're here. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I'm excited. This is a great turnout, and I'm really happy to see CoLiving take off because I too believe in the asset class. I've been in the CoLiving space since 2017. Got started in the Bay Area with Common CoLiving, who are now unfortunately not in operations. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. And I came from CoLiving operations specifically, and now I'm working directly with investors. So I've kind of seen the other side of it now, which is a relief to me because, like you said, Sam, CoLiving operations and management, it's a big learning curve.
It's the code to crack for this asset class to go from what it is now, I think, to like whatever the next level is, right? So that's amazing, Ellis. Ellis, I'm so grateful for your time, man. I'd actually like to bring Cory on. Cory, do you want to come on just for a second and kind of give Ellis probably like the proper intro?
Is he here? I didn't realize.
Yes, sir.
Cory, he is there. What's up, Cory?
He is here, yeah.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up, Cory?
Yeah, so I've actually been working. I met Ellis. So, you know, a lot of you guys know that I was with Vibe Living, which was the largest co-living company in San Francisco for a while, almost a year. And then I had hooked up with the, I believe the head of sales for PadSplit. And then when I moved to Phoenix, I ended up meeting Ellis. So Ellis is the account exec for all of Phoenix, and Phoenix is the fastest growing market in PadSplit right now, I believe. So when Ellis and I connected, we instantly connected because he's been doing co-living for longer than I have. He's well versed. He's been with Common. He was, doing co-living, and then he worked, and he'll give his story a little bit. Then he started working with PadSplit, and now, he is basically the connector here in Phoenix. He knows all the people in PadSplit. He'll give you the stats on kind of where they're at. But I don't think, I honestly believe there's very few experts in co-living right now, just because it's such a new asset class. But I obviously believe Sam is. I try to consider myself one, seeing that I've coached for Sam for so long, and I would absolutely say that Ellis is definitely a co-living expert. So you guys are, and he's super knowledgeable and such a good guy. So I think you guys are in for a great episode, or a great meeting today. So I'm happy to have you, Ellis.
Thank you, Cory. Yeah, we make a great team in Arizona, and we're really just at the beginning of things. So it's great working with you, man.
Well, cool, man. We want to dive into Cory. Thank you for that. That was awesome, brother. Thank you so much. And yes, you're definitely an expert in co-living, and just appreciate all the value you bring to this community. How many of you are grateful for Cory, by the way? It was just, yeah, everybody. I know we've got some awesome wins in the chat, but we kind of segued into this. So I'll get to some wins. Let's dive in here. Guys, be writing your questions down. Like, we're going to give you an opportunity to just kind of pepper Ellis with some questions. So I'll try to keep I know we're going to have some great questions from this group, Ellis, because we talk about PadSplit a little bit. We talk about PadSplit a lot, actually, I think, in this community. You know, my personal model for running my homes is a little bit different than PadSplit. And I think I want to kind of explore some of those differences today, but I do believe, and I say this publicly a lot, I do believe the mission of PadSplit, man, is spot on. It's like, we have an affordable housing crisis. There's 600,000 people tonight that will not have a roof over their heads in America. We need all the help we can get. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We need all the help we can get. And even Jens saying like the market is saturated. I don't know, because I don't like. I think when new asset classes take off, there's this balance between units and then people getting to know what's available, and then units and more people knowing what's available. But I don't think the 6 or 7, I don't know exactly how many units PadSplit has in Atlanta. I don't think that's like solving the entire affordable housing crisis in Atlanta. I think it's more the education of people knowing this is a real way to live. It's a cool way to live. Guys like you cracking the code to figure this out. So anyway, I'm going to stop yapping, but I got a random question for you first.
Yeah.
Give us your opinion on why Common. Well, first of all, tell us what Common was, because there's some people here probably don't know, and why did they go bankrupt, in your opinion? But maybe just give us a little brief overview of who they were and what they are.
Yeah. So I started with them in 2017. They had a couple of buildings in San Francisco. I was tasked to lease up a co-living building in West Oakland. That property was pretty interesting. It was a traditional 9-unit apartment comprised of 3 or 4 bedrooms, and they just did rent by the room. Terrible part of West Oakland, dangerous. Just one of those areas where you probably would not want to raise a family. But I was able to rent that out, lease it up in 6 months. The lowest price room was an 80 square foot room, full-size bed, closet, and a balcony. That one went for, I don't know, $1,300 a month, everything included. But their business model was a little bit different because they did not target single-family properties. I think that was their downfall. They've raised 4 times the amount of money that PadSplit has, but they peaked, I think, at about 9,000 bedrooms. Whereas now with PadSplit, we just crossed 15,000 a couple weeks ago. So all the co-living startup companies that have gone under probably have that same business model. After Common, I worked for a San Francisco-based startup company called Star City. They had some properties in San Francisco and Oakland. They eventually actually got bought out by Common, so their fate was sealed there as well. And then after that, I found another Bay Area-based co-living company called Open Door. Not the big one that we all know of, but Open Door Co-Living. They had most of their operations in Oakland, but they also had properties in Seattle and Oregon, actually, Portland, Oregon. So Open Door had a little bit of a mixed model, where it was a little bit commercial and a lot of single family as well. But they only had their initial seed funding, and they had a funding issue, so they folded eventually as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So you would say Common's downfall was they focused on, and again, I know of Common, but I'm not like incredibly familiar. So some of these questions are just from my personal curiosity as well. So you would say, so Common got to 9,000 doors. First of all, huge feat. That's awesome. But they focused on like multifamily buildings. Was that pretty?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, that's the first part of their downfall. The second, I would say, is they tried to do everything in-house, including property managers and maintenance techs, and to be able to scale that is extremely difficult. So we took the approach kind of like Airbnbs, where that were mostly the tech platform. Plus we have a vendor network that includes realtors, wholesalers, general contractors, property managers like Cory. So we rely on the local experts to do what they're best at, and we do what we're best at, which is providing the tech.
And didn't Common own all their real estate? Like, wasn't that they weren't leasing these buildings? It was like mostly?
I don't know. I was just on the operational side of things, so I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think they did. Yeah, I don't think they did. We actually looked at taking over one of Common's properties in West Oakland. West Oakland was a tough area. And they were charging close to like 36% when we ran their numbers. Yeah, full management. And they weren't doing a very good job. So, yeah.
Yeah, really, really, really a fascinating question. Really a fascinating kind of study of them and what happened there. And so yeah, that's really interesting. If anybody has any other common questions, drop those in the chat. We'll dive into that. But yeah, man, tell us, Ellis, I'd love for everybody to first kind of get to know you personally a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about your journey into real estate, and then your journey into kind of alighting upon? Like, why did you choose to get involved in co-living? Was it just like, oh, it was there and it's an opportunity, or did you?
It just happened that way. Yeah. I mean, I was in the Peace Corps. I was supposed to become a teacher. I taught English in Ukraine from 2010 to 14. Realized very quickly afterwards that classroom management was not my strong suit. So that kind of put me on a different path. Moved back to the US and did not know what I wanted to do. So I was at the gym, saw one of my high school friends, and she was working at Movoto at the time. If you're familiar, they're very much like a Redfin competitor. She said there was a position open in the HR/finance department. Turned out to be just a collections position. So I would call real estate agents, told them they owed us our referral fee. Did that for about a year. Wasn't the most glamorous job as you can imagine, but just had to get started somewhere. At the time, my manager, he got fired, unfortunately. Actually, fortunately, because he was a terrible person. But I convinced the company to let me run the finance department. So I was an accountant from there for about a year. But having come from just the experience of living in Ukraine and kind of just being mobile and using my soft skills and being on my feet, just being behind a computer screen is not good for me. So I moved into biz dev from in that same company. Still, I was really unhappy. But then I realized that the first floor office that was in the same building was Prometheus, and they were a local Bay Area-based property management company. So the idea to drop my resume off there popped in my head, and I did. I took a huge pay cut, just started off as a leasing consultant, working weekends and, but it felt good because I was helping people and I was using my soft skills, talking to people. And then 9 months into that, I found Common and then Star City and then Open Door and then now PadSplit somehow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Would you define for us? It's a great story though, man. That's what I'm reminded of by that story is like one of my mentors has this saying. He says, "Proximity is power." Yes. And it's amazing how a lot of the opportunities that come to us from being in proximity to either a people or even like you said, that you were in the same building with that one thing. And it just reminds me of how important it is to surround myself with like people and different situations where things that can take me to the next level. So that's a cool journey, man. Tell us, what does an account executive do for PadSplit? Maybe just define that for us so everybody here kind of knows.
Yeah, I mean, technically we're in the sales department, but I don't take a sales approach to the work that I do with investors. I take more of a teaching approach because a lot of the investors that I work with are new to the entire concept of co-living. Firstly, just the asset class and how viable it is, and then secondly, to the operations again. So I like to think of myself kind of like a customer success manager type role, but I'm working directly with investors to kind of educate them on the model. And like Cory mentioned earlier, I'm just a connector at this point. I'm a professional connector, and I teach them about the PadSplit model and co-living, and then they do the rest.
That's cool. So your ultimate goal, though, is like driving people to understand what PadSplit is, because it is new, right? And not a lot of people understanding it, understand that it's viable, and then getting people on the platform.
Yeah, exactly. Whether that means getting them in touch with a realtor or a wholesaler to acquire property, or the general contractor for the renovation, or to Cory for management. Yeah, I just connect them.
So what would you say right now with everything that PadSplit has going on? I want to talk about like, what do you feel that you would describe to people are PadSplit's strength? And keep in mind, everybody here is familiar with co-living. We get co-living. We know co-living. Like, there are some people here that use PadSplit for their properties for sure. You're talking to some people in that group, obviously, Cory and some others. What are their strengths? What is PadSplit focusing on right now? What are they good at? And what do you see them like continuing to get good at?
Yeah, I mean, I think the culture of the company is pretty strong. We're fully remote. So even though we started off as a company in Atlanta in 2018, after COVID, we became a fully remote company. We have employees across the world. So we have, a lot of our customer service team and collections team in the Philippines. A lot of our engineers are in Ukraine. Our marketing team's in Turkey. A lot of our finance and data people are from different South American countries. So the culture is good, but I think above that, we're always iterating on the product itself and then on the tech stack. So we use Slack as an internal communication tool. One of the channels is host feedback and ideas. Whenever the account executives hear ideas from our investors or current hosts, we'll throw it into that channel. And more times than not, our engineering team and product team will actually run with it and create some sort of feature that, just creates a better product for everybody involved.
Yeah. I remember when we've had a couple of account execs on here as guests. Drawing a blank on the guy's name from Jacksonville, Florida. Cory, what's the
Emmanuel?
Emmanuel, yeah. E. Yoga E. Now, big Yogi. He was saying, which he had a great podcast, by the way. If you guys haven't listened to it, is really good. We kind of got into regulations and stuff too on that podcast, which was really fun to talk with him about that. But I had a really great point to where that goes, but the yogi threw me off. I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that.
It'll come back.
Yeah, it'll come back to me. Cool. So, I remember. So he was saying like one of the things I think they put in there was some sort of a group chat. Like it was like before they had a group chat, and that was one of the features they wanted. And so like PadSplit, like trying to create the tech platform is really cool. Okay. What would you say? I got to ask you the opposite of that question. Like, what would you say? So PadSplit Strengths are like badass tech, like constantly innovating to make that better. I've seen that definitely over the years that I've been following the PadSplit journey. What would you say are PadSplit's weaknesses or things that people shouldn't look to PadSplit for? Maybe is a better way of asking that question.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, right now, I mean, it's under fire right now, but the new fee model is rubbing some investors the wrong way. We went from a flat 12% plus a 2.75% payment processing fee to now to a fee model now where we take the first 10 days of rent from each member we hope the investor finds, and then 8% starting the 11th day. So that's been under some criticism a lot, and I think I don't know, there might be some changes happening. Don't hold me to that. One other thing is maybe the tenant quality that's brought in. We do background checks and income checks, but we rely on the host and property managers to further vet them within the first 24 hours of them being automatically approved. Cory does a really awesome job of that, and all of his hosts that he works with are really happy because if you vet them properly from the beginning, expectations are aligned. They'll probably end up staying longer, and they'll have better relations with their padmates. We call them their roommates.
Yeah, man, those are okay. So that's really good. Actually, the membership, the payment models on my list to chat with you about. So they went from just a flat rate fee. Now, really, the first 10 days of revenue completely goes to PadSplit, and then they take a less after that. But that first chunk is going directly to them.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that, or Cory? Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, one caveat with that is that if you, as a host, find your own people to move in, we'll forego those 10 days completely, and we'll just start taking 8% from day one. This is applicable for hosts who might have, an Airbnb conversion. They might have a co-host, or they might have a traditional long-term rental with a property manager who already finds tenants to fill these properties. If they're going to continue to do that, that's a good way to take advantage of our fee model change to where you only pay 8%.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually really good to know. I think what's really cool about you sharing this, Ellis, and again, like it's so cool because like these things change, right? And so like I want this group to be the most well-informed about what their options are, what are things in the marketplace, how are things shifting. I remember when PadSplit first started, there was no additional option for like me, let's say as the owner of the house, to approve or deny a member. And I think like PadSplit's add that. Could you speak to that just for a second about kind of what that is? Because not everybody probably knows that.
Yeah. Do you mean there was no option to turn off the auto approve?
Right. At least that's my understanding. Am I right on that? Has that always been there from the beginning?
I think it's always been there, but the default maybe is auto approve. So it's a kind of understanding the functionality of the tech. But yeah, that's definitely an option that you can turn off to where within 24 hours you have to either manually approve them or they automatically get approved.
Got it.
Yeah.
You want to add to that, Cory? You looked like you did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think with the tech, I think with the because I was around because I met Ellis because I was competing with Ellis. Right. I was filling it using our model, and then PadSplit was just on a roll where they were filling it and filling full houses in like less than 28 days or something. I was like, man. And their early adopters in Phoenix were used to that. Like, oh, a room isn't filled in 3 days. What's wrong? So they were just killing it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to not compete, and I'm just going to, join and manage. But I think at the beginning with the fee model, it's funny because people complained back then because it was 12% plus basically that 3%. So it was 15%. With no management, right? So people were like, oh, that's terrible, blah, blah, blah. Now we have to pay for management or self-managed. But then they went to 8%, which I think is great. But then I think the big thing is with that first 10 days is because that first 10 days changes with every single person in every single room, depending on the pricing of the room, it's really, really difficult to do your numbers, right? So I think even if they had like a flat fee, if they just did $100 for the first 10 days and 8% after that, I bet it would probably even make it easier. But it's so hard because, and then people trying to work around the 10 days. I mean, it makes it so it's a little bit confusing and harder to track.
Yeah.
And I think that's what probably the big issue is. But some hosts are being ridiculous though, because trying to avoid that 10 days, and really at 10 days, it's like $200, really, give or take. It's about 170 plus, 10 days or whatever. But it's like they're doing everything they can to avoid that 10 days pricing wise. And then they end up keeping the room open for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And it's like they lose it no matter what. So I don't know. I think it's just the lack of I can't figure out my numbers because it's always changing.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a lot harder to underwrite deals because you don't know how long somebody's going to stay. But I think the savvy investors have come to realize that it's around that same rate, actually flat fee blended, around that 15%.
Yeah.
But we just structured it in a way to where, don't quote me on this, I think we maybe have some aspirations of going public within the next few years. So I think we want to kind of be cash heavy as a company.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point you bring up though, Cory. And I think everybody here should take this lesson away, whether you're using someone else for management, whether you're self-managing, just there's definitely something to be said for a room sitting vacant is generating zero. And has, it's like I was talking with someone the other day and her prices were just high. And she was like, this is what I underwrote it with. I'm like, yeah, but 1 month of vacancy, you could drop the room $150 every month.
Right.
And that would pay for the month that it's vacant. Like you'd be better off putting someone in there. So I think, I think there's a cool play there, and I'm not enough of a math genius to do the data to figure that out. But I think that's really, I'm glad you brought that up, and I hope everybody is thinking about that. It's like, oh, I'm having trouble filling this room. I'm having trouble filling the room, but you're holding to your price point. Or in this case, Ellis, it's like, but I'm holding to the fact that I don't want to pay these 10 days or whatever. It's like, well, just get them in there and let's get quicker to revenue, right? Because full matters.
It kind of relates to, so what I see is a lot of hosts, because I know hosts that were going to hire me, and I was like, hey, you know what, go, because PadSplit can fill it faster, blah blah blah. Now I see them, because PadSplit allows you to do like an initial fee that the host, and when we say host, that means the owner, right? The host gets to keep. So I see that, and it's adjustable. You can put it at whatever you want. So I see hosts with like $175, right? And then you have other hosts that are 50. Well, if I'm searching for a room for rent, I always say you have to put yourself in the mind of the person renting the room. Obviously they don't have a ton of money. They're trying to save. So am I going to get a room for 160 a week, 175 a week, plus 175 move-in fee, or 175 a week and a $50 move-in fee? It's like a no-brainer, but they lose weeks and weeks and weeks because they're trying to get back that 10 days. So it does speak to property management and understanding the numbers and underwriting the deal.
Yeah. The investors who suffer occupancy wise, they're not staying on top of the competition, which is on our website. All the available rooms are out there. You can see exactly what the rooms are priced for, what they look like, what the move-in fee is, where they're located. So the savvy host, they do research on their competition, especially in the couple mile radius that's within their property itself.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks for that. I want to ask you a little bit. One of the things that I appreciate about PadSplit a lot is just they've taken a lot of legal battles pretty far. And I know that they've got a pretty solid legal budget. I've had several conversations with Charles Gross. He helped us, develop our membership model that we use here now, that you guys use as well. And I just kind of want to, I know it's kind of an open-ended question, Ellis, but I'd love to just hear maybe your personal take on kind of regulations nationwide. You're a little closer to this, like in a bunch of cities, right? And I'm sure you hear it and see it in the company in general. So I'd just love to hear your take on that. And maybe as a sub question to that, like what we can be doing to be advocates for co-living as affordable housing. I'd love my group to hear that from you.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, some investors are spooked by the model because we are in the grayish area. But with our membership model, that really circumvents the maximum number of unrelated occupants allowed in single family property. But legally, yeah, it's in only a few states, if not just Colorado itself, kind of abolished that. So Colorado is very co-living friendly, and we're going to be entering that market pretty soon. I think Austin, maybe as a city, is friendly to it as well. But eventually, we want to reach critical mass in all these cities that we operate in to partner with these cities to where we can actually be the affordable housing provider, because the stock already exists. We're using single family properties. They're already rental properties. They're not Airbnbs where they're earmarked for vacationers. We're actually taking that same property, densifying it, and really just blasting it out to anybody who needs affordable housing. So within 24, 40 hours, they apply, move in, everybody wins. Investors win, they make their money. Renters win because they're able to afford something has a very low barrier to entry. That's a quality, ideally PadSplit as well. Most of them are. Some slip by. And then the cities, they benefit too, because at least here in Arizona, I connected with an architect, and he's actually working hand in hand with the different cities in Arizona to develop workforce housing. So they're giving him plots of land, and he's going to develop it. And then he's thinking about using PadSplit as an operator. So if these cities are already looking towards that, they need to really work hand in hand with us to kind of give the investors peace of mind to be able to operate freely.
Yeah, that's cool. So the plan that I've heard and kind of what you're sharing, I'm just paraphrasing to make sure I got it right, is like you guys feel like, hey, if you get to a certain level in a city, like they have to work with you, like, because you're proving out the model.
Yeah. And then even from the higher level, Andrew Yang joined the PadSplit's advisory board.
Nice.
The former executive, something from HUD, also joined our advisory board. So, a lot of the bigger players, they kind of see the potential of PadSplit, and I think this needs to happen on a local level as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. What can we do to be advocating for that? Is there any advice you have for us? Just, I was sharing last week with this community. I'm like, man, we want to go above and beyond to support people that want to advocate and be talking. Yeah. Like, what's your take on that?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to myself. I'm trying to figure that out locally here. So just going to a bunch of the real estate events and trying to network maybe with some city officials for them to kind of firstly get educated on the model, and then from there kind of see if there's any chance of collaboration down the line. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out myself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it has to start with a conversation with city officials, right? Like policymakers. So ultimately that's who's doing it. That's great.
Definitely out of my wheelhouse though.
Yeah. What are some opportunities? I mean, one of the things that is really cool about PadSplit that I like is that it does put together a lot of data, right? You guys have tremendous data on co-living, room rental prices, things like that. What are some ways that we as co-living investors, whether we are using PadSplit or not using PadSplit, again, I know we've got people here that do, what are some ways that we can use that data to just maybe give us confidence or peace of mind about investing in a certain area? Is there any tips or tricks you have for that?
Yeah. I mean, outside of our typical buy box for PadSplit specifically, non-HOA, usually Class C, C+, maybe B- neighborhood, close to public transport, close to work centers, ample parking. We use Mode. That's a data tracking software that we have, and we share that transparently with all of our investors. We have a heat map as well. I mean, anywhere you look in Atlanta, it looks like almost every metro has several PadSplits because, again, there's 6,000 bedrooms there. But in the Metro Phoenix area, we're scattered throughout. We have 115 properties already within just under 2 years of operations now, 800 bedrooms. So there's a lot of pockets to where we still need PadSplits. The potential is there. We're nowhere near oversaturation.
Yeah, that's great. How does, you said you share that data transparently. How does someone get access to that?
Connecting with me directly. We'll do a Google Meet, or I can just share a simple spreadsheet. On data, I don't know if anything came out of it, but I believe we got in touch with AirDNA to try to create a co-living DNA or the equivalent, especially for the lending side of things, because I've tried to connect a few investors to buy turnkey PadSplits here in Arizona, but the lenders are kind of confused because they don't know what income to use. Airbnb experienced this pretty recently, but they're kind of good to go and green lit. So we hope to get there at some point too.
Yeah, I did actually hear about that project. Guys, how many of you think that would be super cool project? Like a co-living DNA, which is like, the lenders eat that up. They need the data. Yeah. And we've got some, and Ellis, I can make some connections for you too. We have a preferred list of lenders in this group that I'm vetting lenders all the time, and we've got some very, very creative that can lend nationwide, very creative lenders that can make stuff debt service if they're using a debt service loan. So more than happy to support you in that way, brother. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I think I just have one more question. Then we got some questions in the chat. I'm going to kind of rapid fire and just throw your way. We already talked about them. I love that. Yeah, I'll say this. I'll say this and then kind of end it with a question for you. One of the ways that some of my students have kind of been finding this way to like mix, and Cory, I think, has done a really good job of this, is kind of mixing kind of what we teach here. So Ellis, I mean, a lot of our stuff, is more long-term. We're not necessarily furnishing bedrooms. It's 12-month agreement from the beginning. Kind of the room is the new apartment. It's kind of like the motto. But I've really found, and I want you to comment on this, but I've really found that some of our students have been using that they go to PadSplit because it has amazing tech, and PadSplit is like basically generating like all the leads. It generates like tremendous demand. And so they're maybe designing their houses in a little bit of a different way, maybe a little bit more of an upscale way. And I put that in quotation marks, not luxury, but more of an upscale way. Maybe it has a common area, maybe it's got these different things, and then still leveraging PadSplit for PadSplit's expertise, filling rooms, right? And then you mentioned earlier, you said, some PadSplits are nicer and some PadSplits are not as nice. You kind of said something about that. So what I want to know from you, and I want this community to know from you, is what makes the most amazing co-living home? Like, what makes a great co-living? Obviously the buy box that you mentioned, but I'm talking more about like the interior as far as how you design it, or the ones that cross the line into not good to good. Like, I'd love to just hear your take and your thoughts on that.
Yeah. There's all different kinds of co-living properties. The previous 2 out of 3 companies that I worked for, they were more higher end co-living, nice furniture from nice, like EQ3, that level of furniture. Room price extremely high even for the Bay Area. Whereas with PadSplit, we're in the more affordable housing space. But between those two, even if it's higher end or lower end, reducing conflict as much as possible is the name of the PadSplit, or the name of the co-living game. Sorry. So that means the conflict usually happens in the shared spaces. So fridges, cabinets, bathrooms, washer dryers, and then the common areas if you do have one. So if you do still have a common area in your property, at least with PadSplit, we don't recommend usually a couch and a TV, because we have a phrase actually internally: only bad things happen on couches, and so we've kind of ran with that. But we're starting to still see, every now and then a property with a proper common area get onboarded, and a more luxury product in this way, and as a result, community does seem to form. And if community forms, they're going to have a better experience. They're probably going to stay longer term. They're probably going to also take care of the property a little bit more. Yes. I think it's just a difference in business model. I've seen the opposite, to where it's a luxury co-living property with nice furniture and built-in community events also, and that worked. And PadSplit also works. So there's everything in between also.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really, really, really cool. And I could not agree with more. Reducing conflict, name of the game. That's great, man. All right, I got a question from John. Guys, has this been great? Are you picking up something? It's so cool to get, Ellis, it's so cool to kind of get inside your brain and just see how you think about this. Couple questions for him. I'm kind of rapid fire your way. John Lynn is coming in and saying, what advice do you have to give? What advice would you give so we do not become another common?
Yeah. Your model, you're working with single family homes only too, right?
Yes,
maybe some
duplexes and triplexes maybe as well would be the far as we go, but we're not doing yes. The short answer is yes.
Yeah, you should be good. As long as you are mindful of the renovation, the furnishing phase, to where, again, you're reducing conflict, and then you manage it properly. The affordability issue is not going away. And on the topic of saturation, anytime anybody in Arizona asks me about that, I just Google affordable housing unit shortage in Arizona.
Right.
250,000 units. Do that in any of the metros that you're probably operating in, you're going to see some crazy numbers. So we're nowhere near close to that.
Yeah, guys, jot that down. That's a great hack. Just go Google affordable housing shortage, insert your city, your state, whatever, to kind of give yourself peace of mind that really there's an education aspect of this, of people understanding this and knowing about it, I think, and it being a great product, right? I think that's cool too. Hey, but one more thing, Ellis, you've kind of mentioned this a couple times. What do you think it was about it being single family homes? Like, is it just because you can put more rooms in them? Is it because they just have a nicer, homier feel? Like why is that better?
Yeah, I think maybe because the stock already exists and the time it takes for units to go online from a company standpoint is very fast. Because if you have an Airbnb that's underperforming, it's already 4 or 5 bedrooms and already furnished.
Right.
They just need to change the Wi-Fi locks, add some door numbers, create the listing on PadSplit, and within a week or two, they're online. Whereas with the commercial model, they have to acquire the building, renovate it, furnish it, and it takes a lot more time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Majority saying SROs were a thing back in the day, but declined for many reasons in the 20th century. Yeah, kind of after World War II. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Great. Bobby, what is PS? Oh, does PadSplit? Sorry, that should have been obvious. Does PadSplit have a strategy to acquire new regions where historically it has been challenging to convince the city to allow co-living operations? Any region that PadSplit has given up due to city bureaucracies? Actually, a very good question, actually.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the cities that we've entered, we're still there. So before we enter a market, Charles from our legal team, we do our due diligence, we make sure it's a viable market, and we kind of just take advantage of momentum. We try to identify, some anchor clients, investors to commit a certain number of doors, and then once that gets going, the demand will follow, and from there, we're just going to kind of spread the word through, local real estate events, online marketing, and just get more investors on board. So no, we've stayed and operated in all the markets that we've established. In terms of identifying new ones, I don't know what that process entails, but the legal team is, that's what they do.
Any like new launches that about, like, hey, PadSplit's like, are they focused on just like deepening the markets they have, or is there any new markets that that they're launching soon?
Yeah, I've heard Denver's going to be opening at some point. I think Sacramento. The tricky thing is entering tenant-friendly states, because if there's an eviction, that process might take 8 to 12 weeks. In a co-living operation, if you have one bad apple, they're going to sour the rest. So that becomes increasingly difficult. I think once we kind of crack that code, we'll be kind of entering, Seattle, Portland as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And I see some hands up. I will get to the hands. Let me get to one of these in the chat. We'll dive in. How are we circumventing discrimination when screening tenants, couples, service animals, etc.?
Yeah, good question. So anybody who applies and qualifies can technically move in. We recently changed it to where we leave it to the host discretion to allow multiple occupants in a single room. So that depends on them. And, if they think they have a favorable room to bathroom ratio, for example, they can allow 2 people in the room. They can also increase the price of the room a little bit. For animals, we have a no pets policy other than emotional
support animals.
Emotional support animal or service animals. Service animals are legit. ESAs usually aren't, but that's the game that they play.
Cool. Devanya is asking if PadSplit isn't currently in an area, would they consider accepting a property, or is it only available where they're already established?
Yeah, so we have a program called PadSplit Anywhere that's outside of our current 18 core markets. I can introduce any of you guys to Zachary Kemp from that program. He keeps a running list of all investors looking to get into a non-core market. Usually these are markets, cities with at least 500,000 in population. Once we get a certain number of doors committed and actually it goes online and gets filled, I think that's when we'll kind of officially announce that as an open market and start to pour marketing dollars into it.
Nice.
So it's a little bit of a process, but
because really, like anybody, if people are looking on the PadSplit platform and there's a house on PadSplit not in a core market, it's not like it's not on the market. It's just PadSplit doesn't put their marketing money in that area until it's one of their primary markets.
Yeah, so it'll still be on our website. You can, renters can still search, New England, for example. We're not there currently, but New England, and they'll see the rooms that are available there. And the nice thing about the PadSplit Anywhere PadSplits also is that since we don't do marketing, the host will be finding leads themselves. If they move in, we don't take the first 10 days.
Very cool. That's kind of a cool collaboration type thing, which, Tom, I see your comment. Collaboration is better than competition. I love that. That's why we're doing this. This is awesome. Charles is asking a really great question. I don't know if you can speak to this or not, Ellis, but he says, very interested in how investors are scaling, how they're exiting other than another investor purchasing the property. I'm sure you get that question every once in a while. Like, what do I do if I don't want to own this in 10 years or 5 years or whatever?
Yeah.
And there is refinance opportunities.
Yeah. So I'm new to the real estate side of things, learning as I go with PadSplit.
Yeah.
But I mean, our earliest hosts, actually not earliest, I met with them in January, and they were big portfolio holders here in Arizona. They had probably 50 properties under their portfolio, 30 something of which were PadSplittable. And they've converted 8 or 9 of them already. They were buying sub 2 and then just doing long term. So when they found out about CoLiving, just the light bulb just lit off in their head, and they knew they could make a lot more money. Here in Arizona, sub 2 is big. Any creative strategy is big. Personally, I'm trying to find a property with an assumable loan to take down to PadSplit with. You can still buy on the MLS, 2 different strategies, either buying a property that's already fixed to where you just have to add the additional bedrooms, or buying a distressed one, either on MLS or via wholesale, and building the equity there for the refinance. I've seen quite a few different strategies involved. And then also, I think you mentioned also buying a turnkey PadSplit. I've seen maybe 5 sell in the last 2 years already. So there's a growing market for that as well.
Yeah. Doesn't PadSplit have like padsplit.com/marketplace or something? Or is that?
We do. Yeah. So that's just a marketplace that we've created for current PadSplit hosts to advertise their PadSplits for sale. And then anybody interested will, just reach out directly to them. We just create the marketplace, and we don't have a say in how that deal goes down. Yeah,
it's not like PadSplit's taking a cut of those homes. It's just like it's kind of like a for sale by owner site, basically, is what it is, right? Exactly. For PadSplit. So that's kind of a cool thing, guys, maybe to check out. My team will drop the link in the chat to that. Okay. Cory and Ellis, this is from Peru. Cory and Ellis, can you please speak more details about how someone can ensure the PadSplit members are staying long-term at the time of onboarding and screening? I think that's like a super relevant question, because I think that's some of the kickback PadSplit gets is like, man, the member moved out, and like, they're good at getting them in, but they didn't stay long. How do we ensure they stay longer? And Cory, you can add to that as well.
Yeah. You want to go for it, Cory? Actually, let me just add something, and then Cory, you can go, because you probably have a lot to say on this.
Yeah, go for it.
So we just recently introduced a new thing to where members have 2 options with PadSplit. Either they commit to 12 weeks initially, and if they don't fulfill those 12 weeks, they pay a 2-week penalty, or they pay a $175 upfront flexibility fee, which allows them to go week to week. So 2 options. I think I saw one of the comments. Portfolio wide, we're about 9.5 months in tenure in member stay. That's probably skewed a little bit, truthfully, because of Atlanta, where they've been around since 2018, where the average stay is 1.5 years. In Arizona, we're at about 6 months, so that'll vary depending on market. But it just ties back to what kind of experience they have. If they have a good experience, they're probably going to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah. Where'd it go?
Ensuring
or staying long term.
Yeah, how do you basically keep people on it?
Obviously there's no way to ensure. What I've found, at least, and it's what we talk about in the challenge and what we talk about all the time, right? If you guys vet your members well, and you set up the systems properly, and you make it a great place to live, and you're hyper responsive, people will stay. What I found is, and this is the cool thing, is PadSplit, people that do PadSplit know they can jump around, right? They know they can move to other PadSplits. The only ones that have left have been for work. They just got closer to work. I've had them leave and come back that same day, because the house they went to just wasn't run the same. It wasn't as clean. It wasn't as nice. It wasn't as whatever. So we have people driving, 25, 30 minutes to work to stay in our houses, as opposed to getting closer to their work. I also have a member that has now been to 2 other ones, and it was just more of like, hey, he wanted some peace and quiet. But having multiple properties, he reached out, and he ended up booking one that we have, and I was like, this room here is perfect for you, and I was able to put him in the room, and I knew it would be good because he was looking for quiet, and it was a corner room next to a bathroom away from everyone, and he's like, this is the best PadSplit I've moved into. So he's not going anywhere, and he's got a good job and things like that. So it's about communicating. It's about setting up systems. It's about screening them. I had a guy the other day that when we screen them, I say, hey, let's get on a call. And the guy had a problem with getting on a call. I said, what's a good time? And I didn't get back to him immediately. And he's like, that's messed up. You asked me for a good time and then you don't respond. And then you ask for a better time. And I was like, hey man, listen, I'm just trying to, and then he kept going. And I was like, you know what? I'll make this easy. Go find another PadSplit. Because if he's giving me a problem within the first, 24 hours, he's going to be a freaking nightmare to live with for all those people. So
write that down, guys. That's a hack right there. Just knowing that.
Yeah. So it's all about how you screen them. And we tell you guys what, we have screening processes and what to do. The harder and better you screen, the easier and longer they're going to stay, whether they're PadSplit or whether they're our tenants, right? Ours stay long because we do 12 months, but they can stay 2-3 years because they know they're in a great house with a great property and a great management. PadSplit, yeah, if I can get them to stay 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. And so far I've been, all the houses that we've been pretty successful. I think we've only had like five or six move outs, and all of them were for work. So
that's awesome, guys. There's some gold there, right? It comes back to the operations and your experience in moving in. We've definitely learned that in our property management company recently too. So yeah, that's huge.
And last thing, the house too has to be like nice, right? Like now that there's competition is good. It's good for the member. It's good for it's good for the investor. Our houses that we talk about here in Scale and PadSplit, we fully furnished kitchen, right? Air fryer and toasters and all that stuff. We let them know all the pots and pans. It's an extra cost, but it's really not that much. If people don't, if they're going to go to one place that has bad pictures, no linens, no furnished kitchen, it's a little bit more expensive, or it's almost the same, and then they have a little less of a fee, they're going to pick the better one if it's close, right? If like this one's way nicer at the same price, they're going to pick that way nicer one. So it all depends on how you set it up too.
Make the product awesome. I love that, Cory. All right, I got a question here from Justin Ellis. It says, have you had any legal challenges / disputes? And you may be able to speak to this, you may not, because I know you work with the legal team, but you're not on the legal team. Have you had any legal challenges, disputes with your PadSplit membership agreement? We are struggling to get legal opinions on reviewing and writing a membership agreement for Texas. Do you have an attorney in Texas that we could leverage that helped you craft your agreement?
Ooh, yeah, out of my wheelhouse. No, we've gone to court. What county was it? Some county in Georgia, and it was a 2-year-long court case, and we actually won. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, Sam, but do you know the details of it? Actually,
they dismissed it, didn't they? It finally got to the city, and they just dismissed it.
Yeah. So
no, I'm not insanely caught up on the details, but I do follow that in general, and it was in and around Atlanta, from what I understand.
The entire time the PadSplit was in operations, and it's still in operations. So. It's sometimes you get cities that are cooperative and understand, the mission that we're after and the problem that we're solving, and some that don't understand it and they give us issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful because, we've had several attorneys that have essentially been a little scared to give us opinions on something as new in Texas as CoLiving. But, we reminded them that we belong to an investment community that has hundreds, if not thousands, of rooms that leverage the membership agreement, and PadSplit's, a successful organization that has tested the membership agreement, and it's like a kind of a back and forth struggle to get them to help us, So
on the legal front, on the lending front, it's still very new as an asset class to where it's just hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Justin, I just saw you were the one that sent me my team the email, right? Was that you and your partner?
Yeah. Amber Masterson.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to deep dive into it and review it, but I glanced it before I got on this call. I will have somebody for you in Texas. What city again?
San Antonio and Austin.
I got you.
Yeah. Sam, thank you so much. This has been a kind of a little bit of a sticking point in a brick wall for us for a little bit.
Yeah. You're right, and I think it's important for everybody to know. Like, if you're using PadSplit, awesome, they're going to take it, right? But if you're right to look at how the membership agreement and ours is modeled after PadSplits, but you're right to look at how it is looked at in that state, right? Because different state rules and different state laws. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to give legal advice, but I can connect you to someone in Austin that would be able to help you with that.
Oh, that's huge, and that's why we're in this community. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know when that email was sent, but give me until like early next week.
You got it. Thank you, Sam.
Justin, yeah, buddy, you got it. Hannah or Eunice or Louisa, if you're on, would you just DM me that, please, so I don't forget that? Is there, Ellis, first of all, this has been awesome. We're going to take like 3 more minutes here and wrap up and keep you on time, brother. But would you mind, how can people connect with you?
Yes.
The best way for them to connect with you, I'd love for my team, you can either drop that in the chat or my team can just snag it from what you're about to say and drop that in the chat. And then there was also another question about a Denver, like if someone's interested in the Denver market, or who would be the best person to connect with for that?
Yeah. So I just got my information in the chat, email, and then also my direct scheduling link. So feel free to connect if any of you have any questions. For Denver and any PadSplit Anywhere market, not a current PadSplit core market, I will introduce you to Zachary Kemp from that PadSplit Anywhere program, and he'll walk you through any potential interest that's building in that market and tell you kind of the key differences between a PadSplit Anywhere market and a PadSplit core market.
Dude, that's so valuable. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thanks for being so transparent with this. Let me see. I think we got a couple more quick questions. I like what Cory just posted in the chat. By the way, we were talking about like saturation, and Cory said that he dropped the Charlotte metropolitan area has a gap of 45,765 available and affordable units. So like our few hundred rooms, like.
So that comes out, if we do average 8 bedrooms, that's 5,600 houses.
Let's go. Getting started.
Yeah, I mean, everybody on this call is an early adopter. We're still very early in the co-living game. Yep. And like Cory said, if you can stand out from the competition longer term, you're going to succeed.
I like being an early adopter. I don't know. That just sounds cool.
Yeah.
It's
like the beginning presentation of every network marketing, right? You're at the beginning stages of this next generation. But this is for real, though.
Yeah, exactly. Ellis, how is PadSplit doing in New England?
Yeah, New England.
How can we boost it?
Yet. I mean, not in that there yet. Area, we're in at least that general vicinity. We're in Philly, DC, Baltimore, Richmond, Virginia.
New England is tricky. New England is tricky because the prices are high. Right. And that was the first place that I wanted to go because I'm from New Hampshire. I was born and raised in New England and was just there last week. And what's funny is I'm taking my family around, and I always have realizations as I look around different cities, and I'm always thinking about co-living and houses. I was driving around, and we're in, Boston and Somerville and or Somerville, all the different areas. And Somerville. I was trying to like explain, I'm like, all the houses aren't actually houses. They're all duplexes and triplexes. They didn't, like, in New England, everything is old, right? So all of the multifamily like apartments look like homes, but they're not. They're not these huge homes. In San Francisco, they're these multifamily, but they're huge units that you could break up into 8 bedrooms. In New England, it's 2 big units. Even my mom lives in an upper unit. It's like 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and and it's always weird, and it's old plumbing. So all of the single family are super expensive. And there is a huge need, right? So it's hard to find single family. And then all the multifamily are really old and hard to convert. So that's why it's really tricky in New England. And just the price point. And then parking is also a pain, especially in the older cities, because they don't have the infrastructure. Like, they basically just paved over all of the horse trails, built cities around it. It's really difficult unless you're in kind of the further away areas, but the further away areas, now you're not getting the rent. So New England is still a very tricky place.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good. All right, a couple more here. I want to honor Ellis's time. We'll dive into. I feel like we've addressed this already, but maybe if you have any final things to kind of say about this one, Ellis, would be great. Do you encounter any zoning issues with the co-living model? If so, how do you rectify that? I mean, I would.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority, every single, let me think. Yeah, out of all the 115 PadSplits right now in Arizona, all of them are single family. Haven't had any zoning issues so far.
Yeah, and you can probably most speak to like your area because you're deep in Arizona. Yeah, yeah. As an add-on to that question, can you speak to properties owned by PadSplit? PadSplit doesn't own any properties, do they?
Used to have a fund, but I think we just realized it wasn't worth the squeeze, so we sold them off, and we don't have any that we own currently. Yeah,
Man,
so
I want to. No, sorry. Go ahead. Anyway,
I was just saying, so now we're just purely the platform.
yeah, I think that's I want everybody to hear this that's on here because I think this is like a really important point. This is going to be a full circle moment. Because we started this conversation talking about common failing, and a bunch of people were asking like, how did it fail? Why did it fail? How do we not fail? And I think it's like focusing on like I think PadSplit did the right thing. They like focused on the one thing they knew they could crush, right? They said, we can get people in rooms, we can build a tech platform. So they ditched their fund. I mean, this is a kind of full circle. They ditched the fund. They don't own the properties, right? And I think that's important for all of us to figure out like, well, what are we good at? And what's the thing we enjoy doing the most, even on a small scale, even as an individual? Oh, I enjoy doing deals and buying these deals. I enjoy raising private capital. Whatever your thing is, like you got to kind of go all in on that. If you hate to manage if you hate management and you hate dealing with people and you hate handling real estate, you should not manage. You got to figure out another solution to that, whether that's PadSplit or someone else, or like that's really, really, really important. So, yeah, man, that's a great lesson. I'm extracting that for me and hopefully for everybody else on this call. Why are couple more. Why are PadSplit hosts leaving the market?
Depends. I mean, the model definitely works, and our earlier adopters are scaling their portfolios pretty aggressively right now. But some of them used PadSplit as a way to stop the bleeding. So maybe they bought a property way too high, and they just needed to kind of help with the bleeding monthly. They did that, and they were able to offload the property altogether to new investors who wanted to get in on the action. Some of them were kind of too impatient. I've seen, there was one actually in Maricopa here in Arizona. It's maybe 40-ish miles away from the Metro Phoenix area, but he had a 4-bedroom property that he onboarded. Didn't get any bites, even though that's a market that we serve. Again, just because it's kind of too far from the outskirts. And on top of that, his listing pictures weren't great. He wasn't very responsive as a host, unfortunately. I do what I can to get these hosts kind of educated and competitive, but at the end of the day, it is your business. We are just a platform at the end of the day, even though we can help with the consulting side of things. But it's up to you to kind of be on top of things and, make sure your listing looks great and doing what you can to fill the rooms. So other than that, yeah, the model works and people are expanding.
I love that, man. I think that's a really great way to explain it, actually. It's like operations and the homes have to look awesome. And we see that a lot in this community. Someone will be like, I have a 2-bedroom condo and I can't rent it, so I'm hoping to do co-living. It's like, sure, but I don't think that's like the answer for this. So I think trying to have a round peg and a square hole, like there's a model that works. You guys have a buy box. We have a buy box. I think that's really important. Has the membership agreement been challenged in court? I think whoever iPhone is, yes, we talked about that a bit ago. We talked about the court case. We can look up the details. Maybe my team or Cory, if you know that court case, that was just one that Ellis was referring to in Atlanta. That'd be a cool article. I don't know if there's something on that. And then I think it's maybe what insurance carriers are accepting PadSplit properties? Anything on insurance, Ellis, that you can talk about?
Yeah. We have 2 carriers that have partnered with us: OB Insurance, OBIE, and Steadily.
Steadily?
Yeah.
Yeah. If my team could look those up and drop those links in the chat, that would be as awesome as well. Well, Ellis, I know we could go for questions on you, brother, for another hour. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. If you just had to put a bow on it, and just kind of give us some encouragement, any final thoughts on like co-living in general? Maybe just encourage us on this journey. What would you say?
I kind of mentioned it already, but everybody in here is an early adopter. Just make sure you are operating well, you have a nice product, and just treat your people like the humans that they are. They need, affordable housing, and a lot of them aren't, at least in the PadSplit model, aren't really used to being able to afford such a high quality living space. So if you treat them like humans, they're going to treat your property well.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we blow up the chat for Mr. Ellis Tran for taking an hour and his time? I really, really, really appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for being here and just sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge. And we really, 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 really appreciate it. So wish you all the best. And Cory, thank you for the connection. Cory was the one who kind of set this up and connected us. with you. So really great to get to know you and look forward to meeting you in person someday, dude.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sam.
So guys, I've got a question for you. What model do you resonate with more? A long-term rental model, the PadSplit model? What was a takeaway that you had? I would love to hear. I look over the comments of these videos. So I would love to hear if you would drop a comment in the comment section, I guess is where you put comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for supporting this channel. Thank you for sharing this channel. And thank you for being a part of solving affordable housing through CoLiving. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video.